I want to give you my Big Ten regular season and postseason predictions, keeping it short with all these teams, focusing on some of the better teams because that's really where the gumption and meat is. But talking about all 18 Big Ten teams and giving you some regular season record predictions, a postseason record prediction as well, telling you which teams I think will make the college football playoff, miss the college football playoff. It's going to be a blast. We're going to have some fun. So let's get right into it. And first and foremost, you can see on the left-hand side of the columns, left-hand column, we have teams 1 through 15, and then 16, 17, and 18 are at the top of that right column on your screen. And also some information just on some of the teams that I think are going to make the playoffs or play in some higher-end or lower-end bowl games, teams that'll make the postseason. So I want to kick this off with Maryland. I have Maryland going 3-9. We typically end with the best on college football with Sam saving the best for last. So talking about Maryland here for a few seconds, I don't have a lot of faith in the direction of the program under Mike Locksley. It sounded like they were getting NIL engaged, and maybe that's why they got Zion Ely and were in it for Emmanuel Iheanacho. But the fact that we're talking about recruiting with Maryland in this video should tell you what I think of the direction of their program. That's Locksley's only saving grace at this point, alongside of maybe winning seven regular season games, maybe 6, which is doable. But where is the talent here? Outside of quarterback, maybe the backfield of the defense and some skill positions on offense. I hate their trenches, and consequently, I think they're going to go 3-9, 0-9 in conference play. Purdue's also tied at 17th. I gave them the nod ahead of Maryland for that tiebreaker, if you want to call it that, because I think they have a tougher Big Ten conference schedule, which is used for tiebreakers. The combined record at the end of the regular season of your conference opponents' conference records is used as a tiebreaker. That's what got Penn State in over Indiana to play in the Big Ten championship game last year when both were tied at 8-1 for second. Purdue, they'll be a better team than they were last year, but that's not saying much because I think that Purdue team was the worst Big Ten team of the 21st century, or certainly one of them. And with how few starters they bring back, with what little production they return, and just the chaos of having to revamp their roster, I think it will be a full-on reset year. So another year of not winning a Big Ten game for Purdue. Before we resume this segment, please take a few seconds of your time to make sure you have liked the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for the channel and for any team podcasts and playlists linked in the description, and also comment your thoughts down below in the comment section and join my Discord server via the description. All of those things I just asked you to do are completely free, and they sign you up for things related to my channel, or they don't sign you up for anything. No cost to you, and all the benefit to you because we release daily college football content here on College Football with Sam. If you want to support the channel monetarily, sign up for a YouTube membership, or check any other links in the description for my merchandise store and Patreon page. Thank you very much, and let's get back to the segment. We have Northwestern tied for 13th, technically 16th if you want to include the tiebreakers there. 5-7, 2-7. Love what they have on defense. I question what they have on offense, even though they're bringing in Preston Stone. We'll see if he even starts there. They have some nice players on defense, and they also have a good tackle, a great tackle in Caleb Tiernan, Aiden Hubbard, Mac Layan, Damon Walters, Josh Fussell. Those are some names of great players, a D-end, linebacker, some DBs, respectively. I do think they'll flirt with the bowl game for sure, but they open up against Tulane on the road, and their conference schedule is tough. So I see them missing the postseason yet again. UCLA, we have at 15th, tied for 13th technically, 5-7, 2-7. It's a similar story with Northwestern. The difference is Northwestern has a lot of players on defense that I like. UCLA has a lot of guys on offense that I like, whether it's Nico Imaliava or Javion Thomas coming in from the portal at QB or running back. And they got Gilmer back, I believe, true freshman at wide receiver. Just wondering what they can do on defense, what they can do in the trenches. Their O-line struggled a lot last year, though they do return center Sam Yoon, which is encouraging. I think they'll miss the postseason yet again, but that's a team to pay attention to with the quarterback addition they got. Rutgers and Iowa at 14th and 13th respectively, so on that upper end of the four teams tied at 13th. 5-7, 2-7. Their schedules are the toughest we've talked about so far. I think Iowa's is only topped by Wisconsin's in the Big Ten overall and in conference play as well. And Rutgers closes the year out against Ohio State on the road and Penn State at home. That might be the toughest back-to-back game stretch in the Big Ten. Might be. Probably is. Just don't know every Big Ten game, and it's data off the top of my head, so I don't want to say something stupid. But these are teams who I think will be top 40 in power ratings, if not better, that will finish with losing records and miss the postseason simply by virtue of playing a very tough schedule, and they have some missing components. So Rutgers, I just think, lacks the overall talent, and they had some just dire issues on defense last year that I don't think can be easily fixed to make up for the strength of schedule change they have. They had the easiest schedule in the Big Ten last year. They have one of the hardest now. And even returning 70% of your production may not compensate for that and help you maintain your 7-5 record last season. As for Iowa, they return less than 60% of their production, and I just have questions about their defensive backfield. I love Phil Parker. I think they'll retain a top 25 defense and probably have an offense that functions inside the top 50, but their schedule is super tough, and this team is thinner than they were last year, where they returned over 80% of their production, went 8-4. It's a bold pick to have Iowa going 5-7, but I think with the schedule they have, it's possible, and that's what I'm rolling with. Now we're getting into some teams that I'm picking to make the postseason. We have Minnesota at 12th, not tied with anyone because they're the only team I'm picking to go 3-6 in Big Ten Conference play. I have them going to the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Or not the Duke's Mayo Bowl. My apologies. That's between the ACC and the SEC this season. I have Minnesota playing in the Pinstripe Bowl. Correction. Against an ACC opponent, so it's understandable to mix that up with the Duke's Mayo Bowl. I have them playing Florida State and beating Florida State. I have them in the regular season beating Buffalo, Northwestern State, at Cal, Rutgers, Purdue, and Northwestern, losing to Ohio State, Nebraska, at Iowa, Michigan State, at Oregon, and Wisconsin. 7-6, 3-6. I love Darius Taylor as a running back, and I love Coy Parrish at safety. They have a lot of good players on that team. Just think with the questions at quarterback and what they lost on the O-line that the offense could hold them back. I have Illinois and Washington tied for 10th at 4-5 each in the Big Ten. Washington going 8-5 overall, Illinois going 7-6 overall. Look, Washington and Illinois both have really good quarterbacks, and they have some good DBs. Illinois is an elite DB group. Washington's is just good, and Washington compensates for that by being a little bit better than Illinois at wide receiver, and I'd say significantly better at running back. Their questions, though, are the offensive and defensive lines, and therefore I can't pick them to have a winning record with the schedules they're set with in Big Ten play. I have Illinois beating Western Illinois, barely beating Duke on the road, beating Western Michigan. They'll win at Purdue, beat Rutgers at home, though that'll be close, and beat Maryland and Northwestern. But I think they'll lose to Indiana on the road, USC and Ohio State at home, Washington on the road, and Wisconsin on the road. And I have them matching up against BYU in their bowl game, the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, and I have them losing to BYU because I think BYU will be more physical than them. If you want to get a more detailed view of these teams, where I spend more time on them, get more specific with the schedules, check out the link in the top right corner of the screen, and that will bring you to my 40, 50-minute Big Ten prediction segment. Only talk about the regular season there, but I also give you an idea of what I think the postseason would look like for those teams and give you a more detailed analysis of the team overall. Washington, I have them beating Colorado State, UC Davis, Washington State on the road, Maryland on the road, Rutgers at home, Illinois at home, and Purdue at home. I have them actually starting out 7-3, but I have them going 0-2 in their final two games at UCLA, Oregon at home, and they also lose to Ohio State, at Michigan, and at Wisconsin in my mind. They'll match up against SMU the Washington Huskies will in the Holiday Bowl, where I have them beating the SMU Mustangs. I think SMU will be a better quality team, but bowl games are weird now, so I sided with Washington there. Luke Altmaier and Damon Williams Jr. will be top 20 quarterbacks, top 25 quarterbacks at the worst. Could even be top 10 or top 15 this year. But their trench play and their defensive play does have questions in my mind. Same with Illinois and the fact that they won a lot of close games. Will that come back to bite them? And Washington has travel to deal with. We have Wisconsin, Michigan State, and Nebraska all tied at 7th with 5-4 conference records. Wisconsin and Michigan State going 8-5. Nebraska going 9-4. Let's start off with Nebraska here. So Nebraska upgrades at OC, bringing in Dana Holgerson. Pairing him with Dylan Raiola, I think, is going to be lethal. And while I don't like their defensive line this year, I love their offensive line. I think Justin Evans, Rocco Spindler, and Henry Lutovsky make up one of the best interior O-lines, not just in the Big Ten, but in college football. And then they got Dane Key, Ja'Cory Barney Jr., and Naziah Hunter as their starting 3 wide receivers. They also have a player in Sear Wright at corner who I think is an All-American. So the defense, well, it will be Rhule's worst, and I think by a good bit, will be fine. It won't be a bad defense by any stretch. It won't be as good as the prior defenses, but it will be just fine. It will have some good players on it. So I love what I see out of Nebraska, and they'll show up in their bowl game. I have them going 8-4, 5-4, and I have them winning their non-conference games, though the Cincinnati game I think is a trap game, and I have them beating Maryland, Minnesota, Northwestern, UCLA, and Iowa in conference. I just have them losing to Michigan, Michigan State, USC, and Penn State on the road in conference. I have them playing Tennessee in their bowl game, actually, and they will be facing off in the ReliaQuest Bowl against Tennessee, and I think they'll beat Tennessee. I think that Nebraska will be a better quality team than Tennessee this year, and that speaks to Matt Rhule and the job he's done. It also speaks to the job Heupel's done, because to lose Nico and still be a good caliber team to reach a bowl game like that, I think shows that they have a set floor at Tennessee. Both teams will be top 25 caliber teams. I just think Nebraska will be a little bit more complete, better, will want to show up more in their bowl game because this will be the best bowl game they've played in ages. And unlike in 2016 where Tennessee blew them out, I think they'd beat Tennessee in this bowl game matchup. So I like Nebraska here to get eight wins, maybe 9 wins even in the regular season, and certainly 8, 9, potentially even 10 wins if you include the postseason and the bowl game they play in. Looking at Wisconsin and Michigan State I think is set apart from Wisconsin and from Nebraska for 2 reasons. I think their staff is much better, and I think their quarterback is a more prototypical quarterback that you want in college than either a Wisconsin or Nebraska has. I think Jonathan Smith's a better coach right now than Fickell or than Rhule. I think his coordinators are better. I think his assistant staff is better. And I think that Childs' upside, that I've watched his upside. It looks similar to Raiola's upside, but he has legs. And then Billy Edwards Jr. is not as proven as either Raiola or Childs in terms of talent. Michigan State is thinner than both of those programs, though. They don't have the same blue chip talent, and they are much more susceptible to really taking a huge step back if they incur injuries. But I like where the offensive line is for the Spartans. I like Nick Marsh and Jack Velling as 2 awesome receivers at wide receiver and tight end. You look on defense, and I think they have some players such as Grady Kelly, Jalen Thompson, Darius Snow in the front, to where with Joe Rossi's defense, I think they'll take steps forward this year. I have Michigan State going 3-0 in the non-con, beating Nebraska on the road, UCLA, Minnesota on the road, Iowa on the road, and Maryland in a neutral field, just losing to USC, Indiana, Michigan, and Penn State. They'll beat teams that have similar or slightly better talent than they do, teams that are either equally as well coached and return more production or are just far more talented than them, they'll lose to. So in a way, kind of Walmart 2024 Indiana is what I'm thinking for Michigan State this year. That's why I have them winning 8 games in the regular season. I just have them losing to Oklahoma in their bowl game, that being the Music City Bowl. I think Oklahoma's going to get 7 or 8 wins that'll save Venables' job, and they'll show up in the bowl game because Venables needs every win he can get to secure his future. For Wisconsin, 7-5 regular season is what I'm thinking, with one of the toughest schedules and in my opinion, the toughest schedule in America, or at least one of them. They will lose to Alabama, but beat Middle Tennessee State and Miami of Ohio. I think they'll beat Maryland, Iowa, Washington, Illinois, win the Minnesota game, their rivalry game on the road. They, again, lose to Alabama, lose to Michigan, Ohio State, at Oregon, and at Indiana. They'll play some of those better teams close. They'll also play some of the teams they beat, such as I can imagine Iowa or Minnesota, Illinois, or Washington close. I think they'll be about 500 in close games and play anywhere from 6 to 10 close games. And because I trust Luke Fickell, I think they're going to break through this year. And they will play in a pretty well off bowl game, not a prestigious one like the Citrus Bowl or ReliaQuest Bowl, but I think they'll face off against Colorado in the Las Vegas Bowl and handily beat the Buffaloes there. We'll now talk about and move on to the college football playoff contenders. You can't have 6 Big Ten teams in, so one of these teams had to miss, and controversially enough, I'm picking that to be Ohio State for a variety of reasons. I think that to a certain degree they get screwed by being the only team that has to play an elite SEC team in the non-conference. You can say that Ohio State did that to themselves, but I think that playing Texas is much more admirable than any of the other non-conference games that have been scheduled, outside of maybe Michigan playing at Oklahoma or USC, at least for now, keeping the Notre Dame game, although it sounds like that's going to be disbanded. And of course, Wisconsin keeping that game against Alabama on the road. Relative to the Big Ten team scheduling the non-conference games, Ohio State facing Texas is probably the second most ballsiest non-conference game I can think of. Of course, being from Camp Randall and being Wisconsin, traveling to Tuscaloosa is a pretty bold move to keep that game, as many would pick that as an auto loss. It's not that way with Ohio State and Texas, but I think that Texas should be the favored team. I think Texas matches up well with Ohio State. I think that Texas is recruited better than Ohio State as of recent, and I think they've done a better job making sure they develop the roster in a balanced way, where Ohio State leans elite in some instances and lax in others. I don't think it's a good game for Ohio State, so I have them dropping that game. I think Penn State's going to be a super team. We'll talk about them in a few minutes. So I have them dropping that too. And then it really came down to the Michigan game for me. I think that Ohio State has a better chance to beat Michigan than they do Penn State or Texas at home. But Day hasn't been able to beat Michigan. I've picked Day to go 3-1 against Michigan over the past 4 years. And my only correct pick was picking Michigan to beat him in 2023. Michigan matches up better with Ohio State, much better with them than they did last season, and with it being on the road, that's huge. So I just think Ohio State loses 3 games in the remaining 9 of their wins: Grambling State, Ohio, Washington, Minnesota, Illinois, Wisconsin, Purdue, UCLA, and Rutgers. In probably 8 or 7 or maybe all 9 of those games, they probably win in blowout fashion. This is going to be one of the 5 best teams in America. They just have a unique 3-game schedule in Michigan on the road, Penn State and Texas at home. And maybe one of those road Big Ten trips outside of Purdue causes an upset to where I think that there's a bigger chance they miss the playoffs than some would predict and some would expect. They're better than a lot of these teams that I have predicted to finish ahead of them in Big Ten standings. Better than a lot of them. And I love the players they have. I think that Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles at linebacker, and their wide receiver core with Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, Mylan Graham, for example, their safety group, not just Caleb Downs, but Jalen McClain. They got a good kicker in Jackson Corville from the portal, who isn't talked about enough, and I have absolute faith in Julian Sayin. But there's enough issues with the roster, the D-line and the O-line depth, and the way the big teams they play, Penn State, Texas, and Michigan, match up with them, to where between them and Oregon, I just sided with Ohio State missing it. I have them, though, crushing Alabama in the Citrus Bowl, because I think if Ohio State misses the playoffs, they'd come out angry, and then they would spend big to have a huge 2026 year. Oregon, I have going 11-3, 7-2, similar to Ohio State, and I actually think Ohio State will be better than Oregon, especially at the start of the year. By the end of the year, Oregon may be better, but that is a maybe, and it's much easier, I think, to trust Ohio State than Oregon in terms of being the better team because of recent history, what happened last year, and Ohio State's still a little bit more talented roster-wise. Oregon doesn't play Texas, though. Their toughest game is Oklahoma State at home. So I have them beating Montana State, Oklahoma State, Northwestern, Oregon State, Rutgers, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, USC, and Washington. I have them losing to Penn State on the road, probably getting dominated there, and then losing to Indiana in kind of a close trap game at home. Early in the year, Oregon will look rough at times like they did last year for the first 2 weeks, but probably for a longer period of time. By the end of the year, I think they will be a well-oiled machine. I think them and Ohio State are going to have similar stories this year. Start off a little bit rough because of the lack of experience. There will be some games that are just frustrating to watch, especially against opponents that can punch with them in terms of weight class and talent. But by the end of the year, those will be well-oiled machines and clearly top 6, top 5, maybe even top 4 teams in America. I have them reaching the playoffs. I have them hosting Michigan in the first round, beating the Wolverines pretty handily there, and then going on to lose to Clemson in the Orange Bowl. USC. I have USC going 12-2 overall, 8-1 in Big Ten play, one of my boldest predictions of the year. USC lost all their close games last year. They did win some close games, sure, but they lost the majority of them. And Riley, with a career 70% win percentage around there in close games, with a quarterback with experience under his belt, with Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane returning, with a deep running back room in Waymon Jordan, Eli Sanders, and Brian Jackson, with Eric Gentry and Kamari Ramsey coming back on defense, and D'Anton Lynn being in his second year as DC. I like USC to win 3, 4, 5 more games than they did last year, and at least finishing the year ranked inside the top 25, which would likely require 9 wins. Now, thankfully, I have them getting 11 in the regular season alone. I have them beating Missouri State, Georgia Southern, Purdue, Michigan State, Illinois, Michigan, Notre Dame, Nebraska, Northwestern, Iowa. They will enter the Oregon game in Week 13 ranked in the top 5, for sure. But I have Oregon thoroughly dominating them. I think USC, with how I believe the teams on their schedule will work out, is going to have a lot of fortune fall their way and a lot of favorable matchups that will puff up who they actually are. I do not think this is a top 10 quality team. They'll be ranked inside the top 10 for the later half of the year and definitely in the final college football playoff rankings. But when they play against a team like Oregon, who I think is the only team on their schedule that will be top 5 this year, or even they're the only team on their schedule I think will be a legitimate, serious national title contender by the time November hits. Oregon will expose them a bit. But I still think USC will very much overachieve, show their future hand under Lincoln Riley, who I have a lot of trust in now. Weird to say after a 7-6 year, but I like where USC's heading under Riley. And of course I have them beating UCLA. I have them hosting Texas A&M in the first round of the playoffs, beating the Aggies, but then I have them losing in a pretty big way to Penn State in the Rose Bowl to close out the season at 12-2. I also have Indiana going 12-2. I like Fernando Mendoza. I think he'll be a top 10 quarterback this year. I like their additions of Roman Hemby at running back, Dominique Ratcliffe and Hosea Wheeler at defensive tackle, and Kellen Wyatt and Stephen Daly at defensive end. I think they did a good job in the portal, reloading that D-line the best they could. I think they upgraded at quarterback. I love Indiana's O-line. I think it's much deeper than last year, has higher upside too. Pat Coogan at center, Drew Evans and Bray Lynch at guard, Carter Smith at tackle. And then when you return Elijah Surratt at wide receiver, Amari Farrell at safety, D'Angelo Pons at corner, and Aiden Fisher at linebacker, I think this team in a power rating sense is going to get better. It's why I have them beating Oregon on the road, albeit very close, and Oregon's a better quality team. If this game were played in November in Autzen, I might have Oregon rostering Indiana and beating them in a similar way Notre Dame did. But it's early enough in the year and off of a bye, and after Oregon, I think, is going to get housed by Penn State, to where I think Indiana may be able to hang in there and escape with a close win. Because at this point right now, I trust their experience more than Oregon's, and that will matter at the start of the year. I have them beating, of course, their 3 non-conference opponents in addition to Oregon, Illinois, Iowa, Michigan State, UCLA, Maryland, Wisconsin, and Purdue. I do have Penn State treating them like Ohio State did last season, though, and destroying them. I have them hosting Utah in the first round of the college football playoffs, but losing to Georgia probably in competitive fashion based on how Georgia plays and some of the weaknesses the Bulldogs may have. But Georgia and Kirby Smart, with just that much more talent and having a better staff, will come out on top and pull away in the Sugar Bowl matchup I'm projecting. Michigan's also tied for second. They get the nod because their conference opponents actually finish with just a slightly better record overall in Big Ten play than Indiana and USC do. Indiana, USC, and Michigan, I think, do get relatively favorable Big Ten conference schedules. Michigan's, I think, is the easiest once you factor in home field advantage there. The toughest opponent they play in Big Ten play is Ohio State by a significant margin, and they host Ohio State. And then USC is as close as you can get to Ohio State, and they're not quite there yet. Playing them on the road and getting USC off a bye might make it tougher than Ohio State, but that's only when you factor in the home field advantage, travel, and bye aspect. Objectively, Ohio State's much better than USC this year. Michigan, I have them losing to Oklahoma and losing to USC. I have them beating New Mexico and Central Michigan, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Washington, Michigan State, Purdue, Northwestern, Maryland, and beating Ohio State in a close game. I think that Underwood at the end of the year will be a stud, top 15, top 10 caliber quarterback. Michigan will run the ball better than last year. They'll pass the ball better because of QB, not because of wide receiver, though. And I love what they have on defense. I think that, Rayshon Benny, Trey Williams, Damon Payne Jr., Ike Awuna, TJ Guy, Derek Moore, Trey Pierce, their D-line, it won't have nearly the same upside it did last year, but in terms of playable bodies, they might actually have a better second-string rotation than they did last year. Don't know if I'm wrong about that, but I think Michigan's defense and the upgraded quarterback will help them a lot. And then we finally have Penn State. Michigan I have losing to Penn State in the Big Ten championship game, and I think Penn State will blow them out. And then I think Oregon's going to probably do some serious damage in that first-round playoff game where I have Michigan going to Autzen. This Michigan team is not a top 5 caliber team. They may not even be top 10 caliber, though S&P Plus agrees with me that they're certainly close. S&P Plus has them at 10th. I had them in my last top 25 at 9th. May have them outside the top 10 now, but certainly inside the top 15. They're just nowhere close. They're nowhere close to Penn State. Penn State's number 1. I have them going 16-0, 9-0 in Big Ten play, winning the Big Ten championship game, and then I have them beating USC in the Rose Bowl. I have them facing off against Texas in the Peach Bowl, the only Big Ten team that will reach a semifinal game. The only Big Ten team I have playing, or only team north of the Mason-Dixon line I have playing in the semifinals. I think the South will have a little bit of revenge, but not enough to win the title, where I think Penn State at the end of the year is going to be that clear-cut number 1 team. I've boldly stated in my Penn State predictions video, link top right corner of the screen right now, I've stated there, I think they're going to be the best national champions since at least 2021 Georgia, maybe since 2020 Bama, in terms of quality. I'd just, based on talent and it being Kirby Smart, I'd have 2021 Georgia slightly ahead of this team. But in terms of strength of record with that 16-0 record, they'd have the strongest resume since 2020 Alabama. I think that they are going to mostly dominate regular season play. Of course, you have the question of James Franklin, but I think this team is just so good with Kotelnicki and Knowles at coordinator. Aller, I think, could be round 1, pick 1 in the NFL draft. Singleton might be the best back in the country. I think Olavega Ione at guard, Zane Duran at tackle, and A.J. Harris at corner are the best of their position in the Big Ten. And all of those except for Duran, I think the best are the best at their position nationally. And there are so many more players we could talk about, but I've already gone on too long, I think, in this segment overall talking about these teams. I think Penn State is going to be that good. The top 3 in the Big Ten power rated, I think, have to be, no matter what, Ohio State and Penn State and Oregon. If you want to take any of them out and shift them down to 4, it would probably be Oregon, maybe Ohio State. But Penn State's the only team I'm confident saying in the Big Ten will be top 2 in power ratings no matter what. No matter what. Penn State is just, they're that good, guys, with the experience they bring back, the development they have, the coaching they have. Head coach is their only question, and when you have proven historically that you can beat everyone who's inferior to you in a power rating sense, and you bring back what you do and have the coordinators you do, there's a chance that you'll be better than everyone power ratings wise anyway. And at that point, James Franklin's probably not a concern anymore, outside of maybe Ohio State on the road, which is tough, and I think will be their toughest game overall, whether it's regular season or even the postseason. I think that will be Penn State's toughest game. Thankfully for the Nittany Lions, I think they get that win, but that's to be seen. Some other things to mention just before we get on out of here is I think the Big Ten is once again going to field the best teams in America at the top. I think that Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana are certainly top 10 teams. I think that USC and Michigan are certainly top 15 and closer to, being the 11th or 12th team than the 15th, 14th, or 13th team, if you catch my drift there. They are going to field some awesome teams this season, and the depth they have, or if you're Oregon and Ohio State, the potential at depth you have, and certainly the upside you have at certain positions, is going to be incredible to watch. So those are my Big Ten predictions overall. I have Penn State winning the title. I have Penn State facing Michigan for the Big Ten championship game, Penn State dominating Michigan. I have Penn State, Michigan, Indiana, USC, and Oregon reaching the playoffs, and all of them except for Michigan I think will host a playoff game. If Ohio State were to beat one of Penn State or Michigan or Texas, just to get one of those three games as a win, they would also host a playoff game. So the Big Ten, I think, really has 6 playoff quality teams, I think, which is absolutely incredible. And I think the Big Ten as a conference has a chance to only get stronger from here on out. Very high on the Big Ten this year, especially high on Penn State. And relative to expectations, also pretty high on USC, Indiana. Michigan's win total right now is 9.5. So picking Michigan to reach Indy is bold, but I don't think it's as bold as the Indiana and USC pick. Just not quite, or not as bold as the Ohio State missing the playoffs altogether pick. 9.5 win total, and I think many view Oklahoma as one of the 3 most likely losses, along with USC and Ohio State. Ohio State and Oklahoma, fun fact, are the only teams I think favored over Michigan in the preseason, though I think Michigan's staff will certainly win or lose a game that they shouldn't lose, and Ohio State's a team they shouldn't beat, but I think they will beat them anyway. An interesting team to pay attention to before we get out of here is Washington, and I'd also say Iowa. I'm pretty confident Illinois, based on the law of close games and the talent they have, will regress. I don't think they'll reach the playoffs. Washington and Iowa, though, are 2 teams that return not quite in the 60s at production, but in the 50s. They made QB upgrades, and they have enough at other positions to where I could see them flirting with maybe the playoffs come November, especially Washington. Their schedule's easier than Iowa's, but I could see both of them pulling off serious upsets. I think that Iowa hosting Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana gives them a shot to beat one of those teams that I think's top 10. I think Oregon and Indiana would be the most likely upsets. I just think Penn State's going to be that good. And then for Washington, they could go on the road and beat Michigan or Wisconsin. And Ohio State and Oregon at home gives them a prime opportunity to beat a top 10 quality team. So pay attention to those teams, and that's it for this segment. Thank you for watching College Football with Sam. Make sure that you've liked the video, subscribed to the channel, hit the notification bell for the channel and team playlists and podcasts in the description, joined the free Discord server where we talk college football 24/7, and have commented your thoughts down below. Check out the description for any ways you can support the channel monetarily. Everything else I've asked you to do is completely free, and your support means the world to me. We're trying to become the next big thing on college football YouTube. 6-figure subscribers, maybe 1 million one day. I think we can do that. And also check out any videos or playlists, anything in these columns right here, where there will be videos and playlists. Yeah, you get the point. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one.